Hello and welcome back to Control Alt Discuss, the podcast for everything technology related. In today's episode, we are joined by Ben Brown discussing the process of his technology integration in his Component 1.
Yeah, it's great to be on.
No, thank you. We're happy to have you here today. So firstly, we were wondering what hardware you used during this project.
I think if we're going to talk about hardware, the most important piece of equipment to talk about would be the camera. So throughout the production process, I experimented with 3 different cameras. The first camera I experimented with was the Sony Handycam. I was able to easily manipulate the phone settings on the camera, for example, switching it to 4K and 60 FPS. I chose to use 60 FPS as with 60 FPS, the overall look is smoother and is better fluid than 30 FPS. I found out while I was researching around why 60 FPS was better, and mainly I found it had a more cinematic look than the 30 FPS option. It wasn't really a major difference, but I thought, why not include it if I have the option to. I also had to consider the drawbacks of using my phone when I was, considering the pros and cons of each item. And I understood that by using my phone, there'd be features such as the white balance I wouldn't be able to adjust on my own. But however, when I was weighing it up, I thought the white balance wouldn't really affect my product or not, because in terms of color, my product's main aim was to include a vignette, which would add the depth and the coloration of a thriller film. So I thought the white balance wasn't really a key issue. I was also really inspired by Sean Baker in one of his first films, which was The Tangerine. While it was a different genre, he recorded that film entirely on iPhone 5, which is pretty incredible considering the quality, and I thought if it's good enough for that, then this could work for my film as well. Yeah, so the other bits of hardware I used would probably been my iPad and laptop. So I decided to integrate these day-to-day devices because of the familiarity, the ease, and the benefits of using them. So I thought I'd balance out the 2 tasks between the 2 devices, such as the editing and the post-production. For example, my laptop was more beneficial for any write-ups on my blog, or when I was planning my CCRs, my laptop was good for that. And also for the careful edits on Premiere Pro, it was really good for the precision ability. But when I was using my iPad, it was really practical because I had the hands-on touchscreen approach. So, for like some quick designs, if I wanted to make a quick mind map online, the iPad was really good for that. So the lighting was another bit of hardware which I did and sort of didn't use. Due to my crew size, my production needs, I did not integrate any lighting technology into my final product. It's because I found that as a one-man crew, it just wouldn't have been manageable to operate, and that natural lighting in my house sort of provided the job which I needed it to do. I thought that it was a lot more efficient and accessible. I did use light during the preliminary task, which was good to experiment with. I mainly looked into 3-point lighting, and that included the use of putting filters on the lights, adjusting the amount of light which came in and which came out. I saw that the benefits of this would come through, but it didn't really suit my product and the direction I was going within, so I decided that for practicality reasons and the fact that I didn't need to add in an additional factor which wouldn't have brought many benefits and may have maybe provided overkills my product, I decided to leave it out. I also based it off my genre research because I often found that thriller films were shot in the dark and there's a lot of emphasis on the shadows. Therefore, I thought that increasing my lights wouldn't really help me create this effect. And again, I thought that the vignette was being my sort of shadow factor, so I didn't need the lighting, which may have affected how that appears.
Okay, perfect. And what about software? Is there anything specific you used?
So the software, I probably used that the most in my production and pre-production and CCRs. So the first example of software I used would have been Celtex. So Celtex is basically a script writing application, and I used it because I found it was a really good website and it was both free and had all the features which I really needed. I had the choice to either use Google Docs or Celtex, and I thought that Google Docs would have achieved the needs, but I've had to spend a lot more time working on the formatting and really arranging the script to look professional. And following my exploration of scripts, I'd become more confident with the script layout, so it would have been achievable, but time-wise it wouldn't have been as efficient. And I thought that by using Celtex, it would allow me to probably write with more speed, ease, and having to not constantly worry about changing the fonts back and forth. So therefore, for practical reasons, I decided to use Celtex. The main bit of software which I use most frequently during my product would have been Premiere Pro. So I've never used Premiere Pro prior to A-level media, which made it a challenge at first. However, I chose to use Premiere Pro as an industry standard software, and the features it had would allow me to take my project to a higher level than which I've been able to achieve through a software such as CapCut or iMovie. I found that Premiere Pro contained all the features which iMovie did, but with hundreds of extra too, which was really impressive, and I thought that therefore there's no reason for me not to use Premiere Pro having the option to use it. So I use it for all the preliminary tasks except for my 6-shot storyboard, and this really allowed me to build up the confidence of using it, so by the time I got to my final product I was really fluent in it and I was very understanding. I also following from Premiere Pro, I also did use iMovie, and I used it for the first preliminary task due to the familiarity it provided. Given that it was my first project of the year, I felt like I was a bit unfamiliar with Premiere Pro and it might have been overwhelming for me. So I also only needed to edit clips together and add in some background music. So I didn't think there was a massive need to use Premiere Pro and all the technical aspects which came with it. So I used iMovie for that and I was satisfied with the results. I also used After Effects during my project, and I used it during the preliminary stage to experiment with title cards. I followed some tutorials on how to do a blueprint reveal, and following this, I had planned to incorporate After Effects and graphics into my project. However, upon editing, I realized that my product would work better with simple text. This is my choice, largely based off my research again, and the realism and the binary opposites which the black text and the white background would provide. My film was of the thriller genre, and the thriller genre is not known for overly graphic title cards. For example, I took inspiration from the opening of Zodiac, in which there's a simplistic text and typewriter style. This meant that through the title card format, I was further able to align my product with conventions of the thriller genre.
Now, we obviously have a lot of young filmmakers listening to this podcast. So is there anything you can recommend for them in terms of websites that helped you?
And in terms of websites I used, I thought websites are a really good way, and I would recommend it to the filmmakers. I would say Wix and Google Sites are really good for blogging my project, and I mainly integrated Wix because of the familiarity it provided me with. So I tried using Google Sites at the start of the year, but I found that it was a bit limiting and was kind of basic, which wasn't really what I was looking for. And so I decided to switch to Wix, which I used in my GCSE media coursework, and I was really familiar with it, and I was really impressed by the features, the ease of use, and the fact that I could sort of design the website through my own vision and not have to use a preloaded template. I also used Google Docs, and that was really good for the planning tasks. So it was my choice of a website due to the ease and accessibility of it. And I repeatedly used it throughout my project to make notes, and it was really useful in pre-production when I made my treatment, shooting schedule, and location recce, and I used it through the CCR process to have some drafts down or some scripts or some potential forms which my CCR could take. And the final website I used would have been YouTube, and I used this for 2 reasons. So one was because it was a place to upload my videos. I needed this as a part of the production process. I didn't really have multiple Apple devices when I started it, which made content sharing really difficult. So if I could put on YouTube, it made it easy to share across the devices. And it was also convenient due to the fact that I could easily link it in with Wix. And the other reason why I chose to integrate it was because of the wide array of videos on it. So obviously during my research, I needed a lot of inspiration, and YouTube was really good for clips explaining genre theory or examples of thriller films, which I could really use to help inspire and direct my project. And I was also grateful to get the clips off YouTube for my CCR1 and my video essay.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.